Welcome back to MindScience, episode 28. In today's video, we're going to be focusing on the topic of meditation. And I'll begin with the disclaimer that the title of this video is not meant to be clickbait, but a sort of non-duality joke. And I think that by the end of the video, you're going to understand what the title of this video really means, and hopefully it will allow you to deeply reshape your view and your practice of meditation. So put away your distractions and really try to stick with me through the whole episode, because if you're interested in deepening your meditation practice, I promise you it's going to be worth your while. Meditation is probably one of the least well understood practices in all of spirituality. Most people find meditation to be a kind of slow, painful torture. I'm so bad at meditating, it just feels impossible for me. And from their definition of what meditation is, I would actually agree. If somebody believes that meditation means silencing your mind, then it is indeed quite impossible. You can't stop your mind from thinking by sheer willpower any more than you can stop your heart from beating by sheer willpower. You aren't the one doing it, so you also aren't the one who can stop doing it. So if we replace the word meditation with the word observing, then suddenly it sounds a little bit silly to say that you can't meditate. I'm so bad at observing. I just feel like observing is impossible for me. Who would ever say such a thing? Observing is the most natural and effortless action that we can do. So I would say that the degree to which you believe meditation to be hard is the degree to which you simply misunderstand what it is. The simplest definition of meditation from my personal point of view is simply watching the mind. You are awareness itself, so you can never not be aware. And to this idea, I'll often hear people rebuttal, "That's not true. In deep sleep, I am not aware." And this is actually a very important point. In many of the previous videos in this series, I've talked about how the perceiver and the perceived are actually one and the same. There is no separate experiencer who experiences experience. There's just the act or action of experiencing, always happening all the time, like a river constantly flowing. There is no river that experiences rivering. So likewise, there is no person who is aware. There's just awareness. And whatever awareness is aware of is also a part of awareness. You might also say that everything being perceived is happening in awareness. If you think of awareness as the matrix in which everything happens, in the same way that everything in the dream happens in the dreamer. So when there is no object for awareness to be aware of, then there appears to be no awareness either. But remember, the perceiver and the perceived are one. Even quantum mechanics demonstrates this. So when the body and the mind sort of shut down for the night, and no dream is created for the mind to be aware of, then we appear to just fall asleep and wake up in the same moment. We cannot say when the exact moment was that we fell asleep, because the mind simply released its attention from every object one by one until there was nothing left in the mind at all. And when I say objects, I don't just mean objects in space, but thoughts, feelings, sensations, perceptions. As the mind slowly releases its attention from these objects while we fall asleep, the sense of time drops away with them, because you can only know time in relation to objects or space. As Einstein discovered, time and space are one. He called it space-time. And it is actually this discovery that leads us to understand why we appear to be absent in deep sleep. So, how do these two ideas correlate with one another? Let's take a closer look. The fact that we believe awareness doesn't exist in deep sleep shows that we still believe that space and time are two different things. This dualistic view of reality leads us to all kinds of mistakes. You do not stop existing in deep sleep, you just don't experience anything. When there are no objects to be aware of, there seems to be no time that elapses between the last object and the next one. This is because there is no I who can be aware. There is just awareness. You cannot experience the absence of awareness. Who would be there to experience it? Awareness comes before experience, so there simply is no experience without awareness. Without thoughts, images, or any other object in the mind for awareness to focus on, there appears to have been no elapsed time from sleeping to waking. Yet as soon as we wake up, something is aware of the fact that you were in deep sleep. So rest assured, you are always observing, and you cannot do or be anything else. You may not always know that you are observing, but you are. This is why knowing yourself as the observer is fundamental. We could say that to know yourself as the observer is where unbroken peace exists. To know yourself as that aware conscious principle is the liberation from suffering. So the practice of meditation is to simply remain in a state of observing the mind. To keep your awareness on the fact that you are just observing. You're not taking responsibility for what is observed. You're simply watching it. The more adept you become at this practice of watching the mind, the more open, clear, and quiet the mind becomes. So with this idea in mind, let's talk now about the title of this video. What do I mean when I say you can't meditate? Now, there's an inherent paradox in all spiritual practices that one needs to be aware of, and that is using any spiritual practice to enhance the ego rather than to remove it. The I who believes it's going to meditate is the same I who suffers and thinks horrible thoughts and has judgments about others, and so on and so forth. It is the ego claiming that it's going to meditate. So the problem is, you cannot ever meditate yourself out of being the meditator. If you believe yourself to be a person who is meditating in order to improve itself spiritually, then your entire practice actually becomes an affirmation of the ego rather than a denial of it. I'm going to meditate because I am a spiritual person and that's what spiritual people do. Or, I'm going to meditate in order to silence my mind so that I can have peace. This I who meditates to try and find peace is the same I who's causing all of your problems. It is the ego, just wearing a different costume. And this leads us to a very important point. There's a lot of misconceptions about what the ego is, and I try to correct those misconceptions on my channel as often as I can. One of the biggest ones is this idea that your ego is your sense of self, or your ego is your personality, or anything that's real at all. The ego is a mental activity. That's it. The ego is a mental activity that claims everything it comes in contact with. So the I who is going to be aware is the egoic I. It is not the pure I. It is the I who claims credit for everything you observe, and when we identify with anything we observe, that's when suffering is created. So this is why I'll often say that the ego is a misidentification. It is not your sense of self. Ego is your false sense of self. It's just that part of your mind, or that function of your mind, that claims credit for every single thing you observe. Even if you give food to the poor, there's going to be a part of your mind, which is the ego, that says, I'm giving food to the poor right now. Aren't I so virtuous? This is what Jesus was pointing to in the Gospels when he said, when you give to the poor, don't let your left hand know what your right hand is doing. Meaning, don't claim any credit for it because that's just going to enhance your ego. So, at the moment you sit down to meditate, This I appears to be virtuous. It's going to meditate to become more spiritual. Who would possibly question such a noble intention? But this is where real spiritual diligence is needed. The ego is a shapeshifter, and so as crafty as ego is, you must be equally wise. Because the ego will wear any costume that gets you to believe in it. It will even assume the role of the spiritual person who meditates in order to get rid of the ego. So, in this case, the very act of meditating is now reinforcing the ego even more. The thief has dressed up as the policeman and is looking for the thief. So this is why we don't get rid of the ego, because there is nothing to get rid of. We simply see its unreality. We just recognize that it's simply a mental activity and nothing more than that. The I who meditates is the same I who gets 2 minutes in and then says, "Man, I suck at meditating." So even the idea of someone who sucks at meditating is also just a thought appearing in the mind, isn't it? And something is observing it. Who is that one? Who is the one who is aware of that thought? Just stay right there. Don't go any further. Don't listen to the voice who uses the word I, because even the I is observable. It's also just an actor appearing on the movie screen. But who is watching the movie screen? Everything appears on the screen except the one who watches it. So there is no ego who meditates in order to improve itself. And as often as this idea appears in your mind when you sit down to meditate, just ignore it. There is only awareness or ignorance. You're either in one state or the other. You are either aware that you are observing, or you are ignorant that you are observing. But there is no in between. When you are ignorant that you are just observing, that's because you have identified with something. You've assumed a role somewhere. So this is the simplest yet most powerful form of meditation, and you don't have to be seated in a lotus position to do it. As often as you recognize yourself claiming responsibility for any thought, feeling, or action, just step away from it and remind yourself, I am pure awareness. Strive to remember at all times that you are just the witness. The more you remember, I am awareness, the more you will observe yourself not getting lost in experiences. We only suffer because we get consumed by an experience. And when you know that you are awareness, you never lose yourself. So meditation is really just practicing this habit. There is no person who is meditating in order to silence its mind. Simply put, awareness is observing the mind. Just stay right there. And this is meditation. In this state, we do not know ourselves as a person, but purely as the sense I am. Unassociated, unattached, and free. So meditation is not so much a practice as it is a state of being. But we can use it as a practice to sort of work ourselves into the state of being. But we must do it knowing that this is a state in which I will soon abide permanently. I'm simply getting in the habit of reminding myself that I am pure awareness. So we should always be in a state of meditation because we should always know that we are simply the observer. So if you can sit down in meditation and have your attention get pulled away into a thought and not believe that you were the one who did it, then you will also do that in the stressful situation, when that bad news arrives, or when something valuable of yours gets taken. You may still feel the mind throwing a fit about it, but even that will be observed from a deeper place of awareness. This is the effect of knowing myself as awareness. No matter what thoughts or feelings may arise, you will not be moved from your center of peace. No matter whether life delivers you pleasure or pain, Your peace is not taken from you. And this is the final outcome of meditation. To realize through my own direct experience that my true self is immutable and unchanging and free. All we must do to get rid of the idea that I am a person who is meditating is to remind myself I am just awareness. This is the highest form of meditation. And as A Course in Miracles says, it takes no time to be what you already are. You are already awareness. Realizing that is where freedom is. Just like an athlete has to drill the basics every single day for years until it becomes automatic and effortless, we also have to drill the basics in order to stop falling prey to this mental activity of claiming everything. And meditation is just the tool that we use to help us remember that our true nature is awareness. And it is this continual recognition of yourself as awareness that silences the mind over time. Every passing day, as you commit yourself to this practice, your mind becomes a little more quiet than yesterday, and you continue to transcend the belief that you are your thoughts or you are the thinker of your thoughts. The nature of awareness is that it is free from what it observes. So when you know yourself as awareness, then nothing sticks to you like it did in the past. Nothing pulls or pushes on you, and you just begin to escape from every trap the mind lays for you. You become very unmoving in your relationship to life. And I don't mean that in the sense of uncaring or cold or indifferent. Very much interested and engaged with it, but in the way of one who watches an exciting movie. Even during the worst parts of the movie, you may feel the emotions, but you aren't suffering from them. In a way, you appreciate them as part of the whole experience the movie creates for you and what it teaches you. And meditation helps us to get to know ourselves as the watcher of the movie, not the actor playing in the movie. So when the actor is suffering, we don't suffer along with it. We're able to watch it from a deeper place of awareness, the place where freedom lives. So it's not that you must first silence your mind in order to then realize your true nature. It is actually the other way around. First, realize your true nature, and then the mind becomes silent.